here because Jeff, hi Jeff, unless you want to get started.
Tim. Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Do you want me to take it off, Jeff, or do you want to start it off?
Yeah, I mean, Penny, we can go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I will cede the chairmanship for this meeting to Tim. Thank you very much, Tim, for your willingness to do this while I'm on the road today.
Sure, Jeff, go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Smith.
I'm here.
Of course, yes. Dr. McBride.
Here.
Nina Rios. Here. Dr. Garza. Of course, we don't have Dr. Kahn anymore, but we don't have anybody filling in for him yet.
Nope.
Dr. Huebner.
Here.
Bishop Hankerson. I see him.
Bishop Hankerson?
Yes, sir.
Oh, can you, oh, great, you're here, great.
Okay,
We're just calling to order, thank you. Okay, great. The first, next item is the approval of the August 26th meeting minutes, which were distributed, I think, a few days ago. Are there any comments or corrections?
Correct. Hello?
Yeah, sir.
Yes, sir. Correction at the bottom. It states that the next meeting is August 26th. The next meeting is today, September 23rd.
Well, you're right.
Oh, good correction.
Thank you.
Good catch.
Thank you, Bishop Hankerson. Any other corrections or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move
That's
to approve
corrected.
the minutes.
Second.
We have to do,
Have a second. Who seconded? I think Bishop Hankerson.
yeah, we have to do a roll call on that.
No.
Okay. All right, well, great, thank you.
I think we need all those in favor.
All in favor.
Oh, sorry, thank you, Jeff. See, I don't know what I'm doing. All in favor of the minutes as amended? Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Hearing none, we can proceed, I think. So our next agenda item is the ACA accreditation.
So we had our review and we scored 100% on all mandatory and 99.7% on all other standards. So that's a very high score, and we'll be attending ACA's winter conference to appear before their council and receive that certificate. And so we'll be doing a special ceremony to recognize that this is the 20th year that we've been accredited here, and we're the only jail in Missouri that has that distinguished accreditation. So we'll plan for October 4th for a barbecue here at noon if any of the board members would like to join us, and we'll be making some t-shirts that have a logo for ACA and the recognition of that accreditation.
Can you say the date again? Did you say October 24th?
Pardon? October 4th?
Can you say the October 4th? Okay, thank you.
Is that time?
Noon?
Noon.
Scott,
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think you said 99% and change. There was one slight thing that they took off for. I seem to recall it was something rather trivial. Can you just let us know what it was?
The size of the cell, which can't be modified, so that's the only one that, and there'll be a waiver of that.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments or questions about that? Okay, well, congratulations on that.
I can tell you also that since September 5th, all residents have been out in the day room and for recreation between 8 and 5, and then on a rotating basis in the evenings from 7 to 9:45. So that's more time out than even before the pandemic began. So that's, we're very proud to have that accomplished, and part due to our recruitment efforts.
Good. Anything else on that? Anything else from the board? Okay, the next agenda item is Medicaid enrollment.
So we are, with Medicaid expansion, we will have 60 volunteers being trained today, Monday through Wednesday of next week. And then the week of October 10th and also the week of October 24th, we'll be registering residents for Medicaid. We're currently going through a process to determine who may already be registered so that we're not duplicating efforts, but this will be a big process for us, and will help residents when they're releasing be able to continue with medication and medical appointments that are needed. Estimates are about 40% of people in custody now have some type of mental health issue, and we're seeing a real increase in terms of medication. It's a big operation that DPH staff undertake each day. So this will be great, and it also will help in terms of coverage if there's an overnight stay in a hospital during their term of incarceration.
Well, that's great news. And we were talking a little bit about this before the meeting started. As people probably know, this is my research topic, so I volunteered to help with any questions they might have on Medicaid expansion, and we are moving along pretty rapidly out now as a state. We've enrolled 244,000 people as of this Monday. So, and it's been a wild ride to get up to this point. It's been a little hard for people to get on the program, but but we're now getting close to pretty much the target of enrollment that they'd expected at the beginning of the year, so that's good. CMS stepped in with a mitigation plan to help make that happen. So, and, you know, most people do enroll online, like you were talking about. I guess you'll be using tablets, so, and that's the preferred way to do it. So the benefits you're talking about are great, because when people leave, they could have continual coverage, and if you need an inpatient stay, that'll be helpful. So, any questions from the board?
Will there
Comments?
will there be anything? Sorry, thank you, Tim. And thanks for sharing your expertise on it. Will there be any kind of logistical barriers for people in terms of like their address changing, or like, you know, anything like that when they leave?
My understanding is that they're going to be given a card with information like, here's your application number or a confirmation, so that because the process does take months in order for it to get done, that they will be able to take that with them and then say, I already have an application in process, be able to follow up with that, and I think be able to change location of address and contact information with this card.
That's helpful.
So so that they'll be given that information, because you're right. I could apply now, and then I'm leaving, and then I won't be able to know where I am in the process. So.
Okay, so the system works such that the logistical barrier will not matter.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'd also add to that, Jeff, is that I know, because I've been tracking this, that it's characteristic of the Medicaid population for them not to have accurate addresses, because people on Medicaid tend to move a lot.
Sure.
And so part of, you may recall a couple of years ago, over 100,000 people lost their Medicaid status, and, I was chair of the Mo Health Net Oversight Committee at that point, and the biggest problem they had was they would mail people a form to say it's time to renew your Medicaid, and they would mail to a snail mail address, and people didn't get it. And if they got it, they didn't understand it, but there are a whole lot of other problems. So not having an address is actually fairly typical. And, you know, we've been trying to work with them to try to get them to not to get stuck on their snail mail address. And so hopefully they've made progress.
When I was chief with the Federal Probation Office, we set up a process with the Medicaid system here in Missouri where the forms could be faxed to the Bureau of Prisons, and they would complete those forms and fax them back to a dedicated line. And then they were able to get that process started before release, and they would come out, almost all of them, through a halfway house, and then be released from there. And I'm not aware of any issues with that process. I think the providers were very good in terms of being able to work through and identify once that person was receiving care, if they said that they had Medicaid. So we'll be monitoring it and adjust our process based on what we learn from it.
So Beth, I'm going to call on you, but and this is unfair because I didn't warn you I was going to do it, but I'm not although I know Medicaid quite well, I don't I wouldn't say that I'm the expert on Medicaid with people who are incarcerated or going in and out of incarceration. I don't know if you know anything more on the topic that you want to add.
No, well, I know a fair amount, but I think the biggest thing is this is just so important. I don't know of another organization that has done this sort of work to link people to Medicaid. So I think this is fantastic because all of the needs of people in the community are very, are similar to people in jail, and people in jail have worse health outcomes. So I just think this is fantastic and should be. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. So I think, the concerns about the jail or the mail and everything like that are the same. So no, I just think this is a great development.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments from the board?
Probably should be also good to mention that we have a partnership with the Integrated Health Network here in St. Louis and Relink, who can follow up with people even after release.
Yeah.
So it should be helpful.
That's great news.
Question on that, so I guess I'm still unclear if we're trying to get a person's correct address, they're incarcerated, they're released. So what you just mentioned will help to make sure that we have the correct address once they're released and they continue to get the care. Because one of the things that was troubling, what I just heard, was that you said 40% of the individuals have mental health issues. So obviously, medication is very important once they get out so that they don't return with those issues. I'm just needing clarity on that as far as their address once they are released.
Well, part of the release process is making sure that there's a release plan and that there's supportive services. And so we're fortunate to have staff here that work with people upon release, and if they go to Department of Corrections, then there'll be people that follow up once they're released from those institutions. So that's something that we're accustomed to doing, is making sure that people have access to resources, and this is just another way to make sure that they have a way of funding that.
And Scott, and we're about to make another senior hire in that space. Do you want to talk about that? Did you hear me, Scott?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're...
What are you referring to?
Well, the community corrections piece.
Oh, well, yeah, so we do have a position that we're interviewing soon for that will be the manager over the community corrections branch, and will be this will be a big part of what that person's working on, just that transitional process and reentry planning, what can be started on the inside. The unique thing about the jail here is you have some people that come and post bond immediately. You have others that are here just for a short time, and you have some that are here for a longer time. And so Relink now is actually going over at arraignment and meeting with people and connecting them with resources so that we can not miss people even on that early stage of release.
And Bishop Hankerson, I will say that I'm going to follow up after this meeting and ask people at the state that the question about the
The address.
address and how important it is. But I'm thinking that if they are enrolled, the important thing is their DCN, as it's called, their number. And, you know, I saw Dr. Garza's joined us. He may be able to add to this, but I think, you know, I know from the Medicaid records that that's where everything's tied, is to your number, your Medicaid DCN number. So it's probably most important that they have that. Do you have anything to add to that, Dr. Garza? And welcome.
Hey, Tim. Sorry, I sort of jumped in the middle here, and so I without having to go relitigate everything, maybe we can talk offline.
Okay, I'll get back to you. That's fine. No worry. That was unfair of me to call on you. So
Whatever advice I offered would be completely out of context. So
that's fine. Okay. Anything else on that?
Well, just a couple things to add is, if you think about other areas like identification, we have the Real ID Act, and it requires, if you've been through that process, you know that it requires at least 3 different forms of identification. It's a much more difficult process to go through. So there are other examples of challenges with addresses changing, and those come back through the mail. Now with voter identification laws that are changing, so we're very aware of challenges that are faced with reentry, and we're committed to making sure that this process works. So it is a new process, but the great thing is that it's a possibility, and we're working through it.
That's great. Any other comments or questions on that? You know, it'd be fun to have an update on this once we get it rolled out. And
Sure.
just how many people have been able to get on and how it's working. Because as Beth said, this is maybe pretty unique, so it'd be really good to hear back on that.
Well, our surprising thing so far is that the ones we've checked, there's far more people that have already been enrolled that weren't aware that they were enrolled.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment.
So therefore, you know, this is really a good thing. We're able to identify, so.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I look forward to hearing more updates on that. Okay, so I think our next agenda item is roadmap to address CGL recommendations. And I noticed, Jeff, in my email, you mailed something to me. I guess it's to the whole board. You're gonna.
I did. I did. Scott will explain more about the document, and I think the board's general interest is just wanting to ensure that, you know, the county taxpayers spent money, and the board spent a good year agitating to ensure that we did get, you know, a sort of comprehensive review, and we all want to make sure that we're on the same page in terms of implementing the recommendations that were made. So we appreciate that the leadership of the jail is similarly committed and not resistant to the recommendations. And we thought we just wanted to hear and kind of see your plan, Scott, for just on the implementation side and timetables for things. So you want to take it away?
Yeah, so we're about 2/3 of the way already implementing. We've implemented about 2/3 of that already, so that's great news. The areas that we have remaining are that we have several with medical recommendations, and they're working on those with their, you know, a lot of those things take some time. There's staffing issues there. On the justice service side of things, there are some core areas that I'll share with you, and I think some of those are more easy than others. So there are a couple of areas where I'll ask for your assistance as a group, your advice. So initially, we have a recommendation to reduce the number of majors from 5 to 3 and reclassify unit managers to captain level or community corrections being eligible for that position. And that process will probably be done by next week, just in terms of the position description, but it's also an issue where we have people in those positions. So we expect through attrition that we can make that adjustment, and there's also some budgetary positions that would need to be approved, which will be going through budget hearings next month. So by January 1st, we expect those to be completed. And we have another section that we're getting feedback from staff in terms of policies that might need to be changed and updated, and as well as a group working on policies where they may not be being enforced routinely as they should be. And so we have different people involved in that process that are reviewing those currently, and expect probably within the next couple of weeks to have that process finished. The other area that we have really where we could use your help on, every person that's on this call, and we're asking everyone in the jail to participate as well, is with recruitment, because shift relief factors of 1.88 are only possible if you have the staff available to schedule a shift relief factor. So at this point, we still have vacancies, and in order to implement a shift relief factor, and I think one of the other recommendations was to add 10 officers to transportation, we need those additional officers. So we're having bi-weekly hiring events. We're attending career fairs monthly. We have posted on social media, and we're looking for your assistance and recommendation advice in terms of how we can continue to increase our recruitment, because we early on we were bringing in about 10 new officers per month, but just yesterday we had two people that interviewed. So it's not unique to the jail here. Other jails in the region are actually losing staff. But since we've added 55 people, we've also had to add supervisors to supervise those people, which creates additional vacancies when people are promoted into those positions. So any suggestions you have on that, or people that would like to work with us on recruitment, we would welcome that. And then the last thing we have revolves around mental health and segregation. And we currently have a group, many of the same people that are on the MacArthur Grant Population Reduction Team, that are looking at serious mental health needs of people that are incarcerated, and there's a delay of over 1 year for mental health evaluation. But we do have a partnership with state mobile unit to come help. Yeah.
Can you clarify that? There's a delay of over 1 year for psychiatric evaluations. Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah, so I believe I read an article recently that said there were about 130 people that are waiting. So State Department of Mental Health has had staffing issues also, and so that process is delayed. So we do have a mobile unit now that's coming to St. Louis to assist with that, and there's been some discussion about how maybe some of those could be done locally. But in the interim, we're looking at ways that, because if they can't be in general population, they're housed in an area by themselves. So we're looking at ways to, and one of those recommendations was to make sure that they get out every 21 days. And so we're looking at what can we do to increase and enhance mental health services. So we do have video psychiatric services, and there's some challenges with finding people that can provide that type of service. But we do have places for people that are coming in and helping as well. So that's an area that if anyone has an interest in providing some advice and assistance, we're open to that as well.
So I'm interested in trying to get increased state funding, not just for St. Louis County, but this is something that I'm sure is happening all across the state. Have you talked with other correctional leaders around the state about this by any chance?
Yes.
And do you have any data on like number of disciplinary incidents or sort of mental health like episodes that have occurred with people in this category? That maybe Aaron would have data on any of this?
Well, we definitely have, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, unfortunately I don't know, Liz might have more data, but with mental health, we don't generally tend to have that data in bulk, like pullable, to count. This is more of a go through one by one sort of thing. So I don't have that, in bulk. But I don't know if corrections medicine does. I can't speak for you guys. Liz, I don't know.
Liz?
No, I don't have any data are you talking about behavioral episodes or decompensation of mental health? And are we tracking that type of episodes?
Yes. I mean, I'm asking about that. Yeah, particularly among the population of people who are initially categorized in this way.
Well, we do have a list of individuals that, one, have had a mental health exam from Department of Mental Health and are waiting for a bed. I mean, this is a twofold situation. You can get them evaluated, but then they got to sit and wait for another year for a bed to open up in the system throughout the state of Missouri. So we do have a list of individuals that have, one, received the evaluation, and then we have two, the ones that are waiting for an evaluation. So I do have those numbers, which we discussed at not the PRT meeting, but a SMI meeting.
And then, okay, that's super helpful. And then since you have both those lists, would there be a way to, with, taking off identifiers, to be able to provide statistics on how many, episodes there have been? I'm just thinking, like, in order to make the case for policy change at the state level, it would be helpful to show that there are, adverse outcomes and effects happening in real time from this population due to the significant delays, first in getting the mental health exam and then getting beds for those who need them, right?
And then you got one other thing. Then you got the third one. They go out to the facility, come back, and then they don't go to court. And so then they decompensate because they're here for 6 months, 9 months, a year, and then we need to start the process over because now they're not fit to stand trial again.
Oh, okay.
So there's that issue as well.
Yeah, so we actually are pulling together information like that on cases and then sending that with requests to expedite those processes to the state. So we definitely have that information, Jeff.
Okay, I'll follow up with you offline on that, Scott, okay?
All right.
Liz,
Yeah, go
thank
ahead,
you.
Liz. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Liz.
Group, is it okay to let Dr. Hendrickson from County DPH?
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
He's a Valerie, because Valerie's not here.
Okay, got it. So are there other comments or questions on this whole topic from the board?
I just had a question on the 21 days, a question of clarity. When you say they get out every 21 days, that's a person with severe mental illness. And when you say get out, they're released into the general population. I just need clarity on that.
That's not.
No, so people that are in segregation already get out at 1 hour per day for their own recreation time. But the recommendation from CGL was that they be out of and this wasn't just for mental health residents, it was for anyone that was in segregation to be out for at least 3 days every 21 days. So that is the challenge, and that's what we're seeking recommendations and advice from.
Gotcha.
Does that help, Bishop Hankerson?
Yeah, that helps. I guess it's, I don't know, I'm somewhat troubled when you say there's the delay in the evaluation and all, and it almost sounds like the inmate is stuck in a cycle, you know. So that's
There've been several,
troubling.
there have been several media articles on this recently. Post-Dispatch has published an article. I know there's a lot of attention on it, and we're committed to working to try to find resolutions. And so we do have these monthly meetings where we're talking about cases, and you could participate if you're interested in joining that meeting. But the thing that I'm concerned with and that we've been working on, and the reason for that group being formed, is that if a person's in custody like that for a lengthy period of time with mental health issues, that can exacerbate their mental health issues and their conduct, and ultimately result in more violations that would keep them in a situation longer. So we need to find ways of getting them the mental health care that they need and getting that process expedited. But you also have challenges with the fact that some of those cases are jury trial cases, which are taking longer because of the pandemic and the backlog in cases that are being worked through the court system. So there are a lot of other variables.
Right. Good question, Bishop Hankerson, thanks. Anybody else on the board have a comment or a question? Well, I want to say that this spreadsheet is very helpful. I haven't had a chance to go through it line by line, and I love the fact to be able to see what your goal is and which ones you've completed. You know, it'd be great to see this keep coming back to the board. Right. That's just my comment. And so we can sort of keep track of how you're doing. And there's no, I'm trying to remember CGL, when I saw this, there was no like end date to implementing all this, because this is a different request. It's not like accreditation or something.
But the latest date we have for implementation is January 1st. That's our goal, or to finish all of these. And those that are January 1st are related to the budget, which can't be implemented until the budget would start January 1st.
Okay. Well, I mean, just speaking for myself, I would love to see this coming back as maybe a regular agenda item. And as far as the health ones, I'm just scanning this pretty quickly. You mentioned that you hadn't had a chance to fill out those dates on the health part of the spreadsheet.
Yeah, so
a lot of them are contingent on the big, huge staffing contracts trying to award, and then a lot of it has to do with being able to facilitate medical care off of an electronic health record that is good, which is also with we are investigating, looking at changing and getting a new health record that would help with collecting statistical data to be able to determine outcomes and successes, but that too revolves around the budget. And so we're aware of, I mean, what GCL stated was not a surprise to us in any way. It revolves around staffing and being able to have better technology in helping track things and providing care.
Well, that's helpful, and it's probably important that the council know that that's part of the barrier to getting that done.
Yeah. They're working on that too.
Yep, exactly.
He's working across the street to help.
Yep. Other comments or questions? Okay, thank you for that report. Aaron, you're up on the dashboard.
Okay, so, all right. Is this sharing properly?
It is, yes.
Okay, great. The big thing I wanted to highlight this month is our great news with daily population. For the first time in over 2 years, we are now in the 700s. I'll zoom in a little bit. our progress since February of 2022 has been great. We were over 900 in February, and now as of today, we're at 785. As you can see, it's been a nice gradual decline over the past 8 months. So I just wanted to highlight that because I think it's been a lot of different factors, but gradual hard work has paid off.
Speaking of those factors, before you go off that, Aaron, could you speak to those? Is that mostly because of the courts being opened up a little bit more, or is there other factors?
That's a factor. The rate at which we've been releasing people has really gone up because our booking numbers actually haven't gone down. So the number of bookings we've been having is right at about the same as it's been for a couple of years. So I'd have to imagine that since the booking rate hasn't changed, it's due to the release rate, and the fact that it's due to the release rate is almost certainly a sign that it's at least in large part due to the courts.
Thank you.
And we have a population reduction team funded through the MacArthur grant that it includes representatives from, and Beth Hubner actually is coordinating that group, but we have people from the prosecutor's office, public defender's office, as well as community agencies and the jail, and we're reviewing cases that and discussing those to look at ways of releasing nonviolent, lower-level people that are here in custody. We have focused on our efforts to make sure that people here on low bond, that we're looking at options. There's partnership with the Bail Project that's been increased. We also have a clergy bond program now with transitional housing, so that if housing was an issue, that we can make sure that we have an option for them. And we also implemented a GPS program here where our agency would pay for it for people that are here that can't post bond, and the court would feel more comfortable having GPS tracking. So there are a number of efforts that are all coming into play here to make sure that people that are in custody are not here just because they can't post bond.
Great. I think I heard somebody trying to jump in, and then I saw on the screen.
Dr. Garza.
Dr. Garza had a comment.
Yeah, Dr. Garza was curious about a graph that compares the booking and release rates in one chart. I could do that. I'm happy to do that if you all are interested, but looking at these numbers gives a pretty good comparison, the bookings by month and the releases by month, at least a good ballpark of those two numbers. I will say, I think that I don't, obviously since September is not done yet, we can't know for sure, but I will say I think the releases are going to far outpace the bookings for September because the population's gone down quite a bit this month. But if you look at these two graphs, bookings and releases, and compare the two, you'll get roughly what you would get if you plotted the booking and release rates on one graph.
Probably good to, Beth, you might want to say something here, but I think based on the success that the MacArthur's seen with our efforts, there's possibility of an extension.
Yes, absolutely. They've been very happy with all of our efforts, so they have asked us to apply for a few more years to continue our work. And that's, well, also to continue our work, but also to share the results of some of these things, like the population review team, with other organizations. And I should say, absolutely, the courts are open, but these numbers are substantially lower than 3 or 4 years ago. So even with the courts opening them up, that's definitely helped. But to be able to keep this low of a number requires kind of all hands on deck to make sure that we're moving people through.
Yeah, to what Beth just said, I think this is, if you look at our population history, obviously there's this one huge decline that happened when COVID started and we let everybody out of the jail that we could, and we bottomed out at 703. But other than that one exception, this is the lowest that that the jail population's ever been. Is that right, Beth? I don't think I've ever seen it in the 700s, but for this short stretch right at the beginning
Right.
of COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than that kind of, historical event. I mean, I've seen all the records for populations with the jail back decades, and, we're basically at about a 10-year, low.
Yeah.
So yeah, good work to everyone.
I also should mention that, speaking to another factor that was briefly brought up, the Bail Project has recently, I'm not sure how often it happens, but the Bail Project recently, because I send them a list every week of qualified candidates based on people's bond conditions, and they recently expanded their cap for what qualifies as a qualified candidate under their list. So that might also be possible that they're getting to more people, both with higher bond caps and earlier, since they're now getting weekly lists. So that's another factor that I don't have a way to measure the impact of that, but it's a positive sign that they may be able to be doing a little bit more active work on some of these cases. And as Beth said, of course, the PRT team helps immensely.
Keep going, Aaron. I interrupted you. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're good. I wanted to bring up that use of force was again pretty low this month. It was a slight bit higher than last month on a per resident basis, but we're still talking about pretty low compared to some of the prior years. Yeah, for most of this year, the numbers have been pretty low, with a couple moderate exceptions. The numbers look pretty good on this as well. Are there any questions on the main dashboard before I go over to the supplemental dashboard for some of those metrics?
It's just
Dr. Garza,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Bishop Hankerson.
I was just saying, it's interesting to see the population goes down when COVID hits, but the use of force goes up during that same time. Can you kind of explain that, what happened there?
Well, it was a little bit of a unique period of time in the jail. Scott can speak more to that, but I would say that the use of force going up in that same period might not be particularly directly related to the population going down.
I'm not seeing that, though. If you look, hover over that, if you wouldn't mind, because the pandemic's, let's take a look at that.
Daily population or use of force?
Well, it looks to me like it's going down, so I'm not seeing where it's going up.
I think he's talking about the earlier period.
Yeah,
March
2020. Yeah,
March 2020 is when the pandemic started, and that actually is lower than it was early in 2019. So maybe I'm not looking at it.
I think you might be talking about this period in here. Sorry, I'm pulling it up on my computer so Scott can see it closer.
Sure.
So this part is certainly dropped, but this part was
so I
the
mean,
early part.
here's the peak of use of force that happened in March 2020, which was when COVID hit, and then as we went down in terms of the number of residents, use of force also seemed to go down over that time too.
Yeah, I came here in July of 2021, so I have to rely on Darby. Do you have any feedback on what may have happened?
Use of force is during that time?
Yeah.
Based on a few things, there's a lot of tension in the jail, property fights, inmate population, due to minimum time being out of the cell because of practicing social distancing. So the other factors that played a part is just about fights were a big thing at that time. They just weren't getting the time out of their cell, and once they did, people would argue and fight over the phone because it was limited time they could be on the phone during that time. So there were other contributing factors based on what we're dealing with at that time.
Does that help, Bishop Hankerson?
Yeah, that helps. And I mean, it goes back to what I'm saying about mental health, because I heard you mention tension, and a lot of times what is happening mentally, socially, and all of that affects behavior. So I'm just kind of tying that together. So that's just a big concern of mine because
Yeah, I think that,
if you,
one thing to point out is back in November of 2021, we implemented tablets here for all residents and also 2 officers for each pod. And so since that time, use of force has gone down by 30%, or I'm sorry, 40%, and use of the assaults on staff and on other residents have gone down by 60%. So there have been some policy changes, and now that the residents have access to communicate via the tablet, by phone with their family, or email 22 hours of the day, that issue of phone access is no longer a challenge, and even during times where there was a spike in COVID and some of the programming was not being held, there were options for people. Over 80,000 hours of educational programs have been completed on those tablets, and the public libraries have donated 50 programs, and we also have a lot of reading and books that are available on those tablets as well. So next month we'll be starting, in addition to the Medicaid expansion, we'll be having the college classes. We've already implemented a lot more educational programming in the jail. We've got the Building Union Diversity Group coming in where people can apply for that program on their tablet. None of those things were available back in March. And speaking from somebody who's been involved in corrections for over 35 years, the fact that we can have internet in the classrooms now and have tablets is just amazing progress. So that's probably one of the benefits of, if you're looking at what the pandemic has caused, it's required us to use video hearings where we're not having to transport people, and we've made progress with that as well, just in terms of technological advances in the jail.
and I also just want to comment a little bit too, even with, in the community, the domestic assaults that were high during the pandemic, even those arrests have gone down. So it kind of factored into the jail as well. You know, you had that tension of being confined, and once you came out of confinement, even I noticed even the domestic arrests on domestic assaults have started to go down by coming to the jail.
Other questions on that first dashboard? I might make the comment, and I appreciate you making the comment about the stress that the COVID itself created, because confinement affected a lot of people. But you know, we also went through a period where there was a lot of open staff positions, and that was you know, though, but we've made progress on the corrections officer staff shortage, not as much on the health side, but that may have contributed to it as well. And Aaron, when you get to you might want to show the next dashboard, because I think some of the things that are on that next dashboard, yeah, so I don't want to take over your role, but if you look at the jail visits per month, you can see a big drop in the number of jail visits per month at the beginning of COVID period, and then some fluctuations on overtime hours that might be related to what we just talked about. The resident to corrections officer ratio doesn't go back that far, nor does the open positions, but I just noticed.
No, we only have data on that starting earlier this year.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
But I noticed the pattern on the overtime hours and the jail visits, which might be related to what we just talked about.
Yeah, and there was, as to be mentioned before, as somebody else mentioned before too, we didn't have video visits here before COVID, so the number of professional and social visits combined is lower than it was before COVID. But that's also partially accounted for, or made up for, by the addition of the video visitations as well.
Anything else you want to say about these dashboards, Aaron?
I don't think so. I think my main focus this time was to talk about the improvements we've had in population. Does anybody else have any other questions for me?
Dr. Garza, if you're still on, you had that question about putting those graphs together. Was that adequately
Yeah.
answered, or do you want to follow up?
No, I think it's fine. I think I didn't realize the other chart was right next to it, so apologize.
Oh, no problem.
No reason to apologize. Okay. Anybody else?
All right, Liz, you ready?
Yep. So there's really, we're maintaining, I guess you would say, status quo in regards to the clientele coming into the facility. There isn't any outliers in regards to health conditions, mental health, and substance abuse. That seems to be about the same as out in the community. I don't have anything in particular that I needed to share on behalf of medical unless someone has some questions.
Can you remind me what a safety event is? Sorry.
Safety event is that any employee can report to the safety, we have an email, anything that they had concerns with as far as regards to medical care within the facility.
Got it.
Labs not being received in a timely fashion, or medications on back order, or anything having to do with the medical care that we can, because we are so big and we're 24 hours, we want to give all employees the opportunity to submit their concerns so that we can investigate and see if there is a system problem, a breakdown with labs, x-ray, medicine, providing care, missing people, did we miss somebody, they slipped through the cracks, something like that. So safety events, employees still continue to do it, and we encourage that so that we can stay on top of the practice.
Yeah, I just noticed an interesting pattern there. It was pretty low, then it spiked up. And
it's all got to do with communication, new staff come through.
Got it. Okay.
Because we're constantly reminding everybody. And, you know, in our all-staff meetings, we go over any system changes, policy changes, so everybody is aware of things that we've identified as concerns.
So I noticed on the graph on substance, did you want to add something?
No.
Oh, sorry. On the graph of substance use disorders, if you want to blow that up, Aaron, that'd be great. That may, you know, I noticed those bars are pretty high in the last few months, and that may address some of Bishop Hickerson's comments as well, because it's sort of pointing out, you know, an increase in the summer, it looks like to me, of those numbers, pretty high.
So the gold ones are the opioid use, and the other ones are the other recreational usage. And even with the pandemic, we have individuals that are using different substances besides opioids as well. And remember, this is just the individuals that have volunteered. And so we would like to start tracking once Aaron gets new software. We're going to be able to maybe track some different things to report who refused, the number per month, and compare to how many bookings, how many chose to give us a sample, how many did not. And that may reflect in the numbers that we're reporting.
Interesting.
And I mean, I'm hoping to get the new software soon, but as you guys have probably heard, I mean, it's been a difficult process trying to get that all. It's been over a year that the transition has been in place, and unfortunately, we've had to kind of start from the beginning again, as we've had people who, you know, were spearheading the process on the county data team side who left, and et cetera. But the other thing I wanted to mention with respect to this graph is I know about 3 or 4 months ago, I think Scott had mentioned that we were dealing with a huge influx of people here for fentanyl issues. So that may track with what was going on here with these huge bars in May, June, and such.
Thank you. Other comments on this dashboard before we go to the next one? Okay, you can probably pull up the next one, Karen.
And this dashboard just tells you medical conditions of our population that we have in the facility. So there's really not any outliers in the medical condition of the population we're treating here.
And I do notice on the mental health disorders one, it was a pretty steady increase.
We were, and then,
Until the summer, it's dropped a little bit, which
yeah.
I guess good, but it's still related to the previous point. If I read that right, my eyes are terrible. It's now 30% and it was over 40%, so.
Correct.
Or close to 40%.
Can you break that down when you say about the summer? How that correlates to the mental health disorders going up?
I don't know that the weather has anything.
Yeah, sorry, it's not.
Has anything to do with mental health conditions in our population that we serve. It's the ones that it's upon coming in, do they identify that they have mental health concerns? Have they been treated out in the community? Can we continue them on the same medications for the continuity of care, or that, you know, we've identified that they potentially may have a mental health issue? But I cannot say that weather contributed to mental health. Weather does contribute to substance use, but not necessarily with the mental health.
Yeah, my apology, Bishop Higginson. I was the one who said the summer, and it was just a way to point out, get people to look at that part of the graph. So I wasn't trying to make a correlation, although it was a good question because I was wondering.
I'll also note about this graph, I think that part of the reason that, I mean, there was a peak in May and June, a little higher than normal, but I think part of the reason that it looks like it was such a stark change is because we also had an abnormally low point in late 2021 too. So, you know, if this number, if you eliminate 1 month here, which was abnormally low, and 1 or 2 months here, which were abnormally high, the overall number that we're at here is pretty close to the 2 or 3 year average.
You sound like you're well trained with statistics.
Yes, he does. Take out the outliers and here is what you have. Thank you, Aaron.
Sorry, I spoke over someone. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, you know, these metrics are there's not a whole lot of data points is the point I'm trying to get at. We don't have you know, 25 years here that we're looking at to identify whether these deviations from the norm are really significant or not. So it is what it is.
Yeah, one good point you're making, Aaron, is that in any time you have data that is daily, monthly, time oriented, you can have noise. And it's certainly, you want to look at the noise to see whether it's a trend or not, or if it's just noise.
Thank you. Any other questions? I can give you our COVID update. We were just shy of 23,000 COVID tests that have been done since the beginning of the pandemic. And we have 560 positives since May of 2020. And currently in-house, we have 2 COVID positive individuals that came in from the street that tested positive. So.
I was calculating your rate here real quick.
Oh, what's my rate?
2.4%. So, and you know, Dr. Garza, I hate to do it in front of him because he's the expert, but that seems like a pretty low rate. Although you may want to speak to the fact that the tests now are just the whole population is different. Has anything changed with regard to that in the jail? Like, you know, I know from on the board that I'm on the St. Louis Health Board, it's people are doing a lot of at-home tests.
Well, we're doing rapid tests upon coming in,
Okay.
and then we will do the PCR if based off of symptoms and things like that, so.
Got it, thanks. Again, it's a great
Hey, Tim.
record. Go ahead, Dr. Garza. Yeah.
So just a related question, and maybe Dr. Heinrichs knows the answer to this too. Are we going to start doing flu immunizations anytime soon?
Yes. Yes, we are. We are offering the flu vaccine along with the new COVID booster shot that has come out that is supposed to address the current COVID strands that we have. So that will be available to all patients in the facility.
Excellent. And I'm assuming you have resources to screen for influenza as well for patients that
Correct.
present? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Do you know what the refusal rate is on?
Unfortunately, it's rather high
Okay.
for the flu vaccine.
Or the COVID one, but.
The COVID, we work hard.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this year goes.
Okay.
We're gonna, because it's anticipated that this year could be potentially rough with flu season and COVID. So we're definitely advocating that everybody get their vaccine in
Yep.
both areas.
Well, it's a challenge in this community.
Yes.
Just, I mean, I'm speaking of the region, you know, because I see some of those numbers. It's not, you know, it's not where we want it to be necessarily, but.
Correct.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm done.
Dr. Heinrichs, if I could just chime in a bit, we have taken advantage of the availability of antigen testing at the jail. In the last month or so, we've had a lot more kits that are available, so we're able to screen everybody coming in as well as the symptoms check. And in addition to that, we're trying to screen for people coming into the jail that are immunocompromised so that if they become positive for COVID, we can take action in terms of trying to get medication available for them to treat the infection. So we have made some positive strides, I think, over the last month with that.
Thank you.
Hey, Jim, do you have access to Paxlovid as well?
We do, Alex, through the Diamond pharmaceutical that supplies medications, but we've been trying to come up with other avenues for that because there may be a 1 or 2 day delay for them to get that to us.
Yeah.
So we've even talked about using a local pharmacy and getting it through that, or Affinia, any number of other possibilities, just because the timeline really is not in our favor if we have to wait for a mail order to deliver the medicine.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim.
Anything else on the COVID report? I don't see it on the agenda, but I'm going to take the liberty of being standing in chair to see if there's any other business. Anything anybody wants to raise? Going once, twice, okay, just for fun. Do we have any public comments?
There are none this month.
There are none, okay. We go to the people in the room to see if we don't usually do, no, we don't do that. All right, it says set next board meeting, but we probably have it on the
October 28th.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Everybody hear that, October 28th? Okay, maybe this is when I should have said any new business or old business. Do we want to move to adjourn?
Yes. Somebody.
Somebody move to adjourn, that's not the chair.
So moved.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Do we need to vote on that?
No, just all in favor.
All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you for being here. Have a good month. Stay warm.
Thank you.